at the bottom.
All right, welcome to the Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025 Ordinance Revision Committee meeting. It has been a while. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. So this is an opportunity for individuals to speak for up to 3 minutes. At this time, please press *9 if on the phone or use the raise hand feature in Zoom. City staff will identify callers by the last 3 digits of their phone number or by name for Zoom users. You will hear an announcement when it's your turn to speak. Please move to a quiet area and mute any background noise. And for all participants, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Planner DeLeo, are you running the?
Yeah. Okay. Mariana from one of the panels. Yes. At the top of my screen is caller with phone number ending 326. You are allowed to speak. Please unmute.
*9 to unmute.
Caller, again, ending in 326. If you can unmute, I believe you do that by pressing *9.
There we go.
Hello,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Jeff Crockett, and I live at 506 East Kingsley. I realize this is just a work session, but I think what I would like to say is important. I would like to start with thank yous. First, I would like to thank Jill Thatcher, Historic Preservation Coordinator, who has provided many years of support to residents in historic districts as they restore their homes. My wife and I have taken advantage of her expertise many times, and the Old Fourth Ward Historic District Association is grateful for her guidance, and the result has been many beautifully restored homes in our community. I would also like to thank Michelle Bennett, who, with Jill, led a session with a comprehensive use plan as it relates to historic preservation. As a result of that session, we took the first steps in developing an historic preservation community in Ann Arbor, and in the coming months, we intend to expand that community. Thirdly, I would like to thank Councilmember Dish for continuing support for historic preservation. And furthermore, I would like to thank Julie Ritter for the excellent letter she sent to you, the Planning Commission, yesterday, suggesting changes to the historic preservation wording on page 60 of the comprehensive use plan. I support those changes. The revised statement that we recommend is as follows. Historic district boundaries will be maintained and development will continue to adhere to the existing standards and design guidelines approved by the Historic District Commission. The city's 15 historic districts are legally protected with the purpose of preserving the city's buildings and places of cultural and historical significance for future generations, an outcome of decades of legislative actions by the city. To learn more about historic districts in Ann Arbor's past, take the SMART tours on the Ann Arbor District Library website and visit Ann Arbor's Bicentennial website. These changes restore the original wording of sentence 1, which recognizes the existing historic preservation guidelines in the Historic District Commission, which includes appointees just like you. Omitting the Historic District Commission is a serious oversight and a disservice to the volunteers serving on the commission. The SMART tours developed by Norm Tyler and Tom Stolberg are a significant contribution to Ann Arbor, serving both as an educational and recreational resource. We also have a concern about the transition designation for the Old Fourth Ward Historic District, but I don't have the time to talk about that, but I have expressed it in an email I sent you today. The good news is that Tom Stolberg and I have responded to an invitation made by Commissioner Norton at the last PC meeting to meet with him and Commissioner White for coffee. We believe that such a meeting will represent a positive step for the community engagement we've been asking for. Commissioner Norton, please let us know what day and time works for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next in line is caller ending 134. You can unmute and speak for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Planner DeLeo.
Oh, you muted again.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, that was my shortest public comment on record. Thank you, Planner DeLeo and Chair Hammerschmidt, I believe.
Yep.
Ken Garber, you know me. I don't have anything nearly as weighty to deliver as Mr. Crockett. I just, as a person who exclusively bikes and uses transit to get around town, I just wanted to say thank you for reconsidering the bike parking requirements tonight. I look forward to the discussion. I haven't had time to review the staff draft, but it looks like, just for example, multifamily dwellings, it's going to be tightened up from 1 per 5 units to 1 per 2 for Class A, 1 per 10 for Class C. Just at first glance, that looks great, but I'm sure you'll give everything your thoughtful consideration. I haven't had time to look at the ADU or the signage ordinances, but I look forward to that discussion as well. And I commend the UDC for taking the time, even during this extremely taxing and busy period in your Planning Commission lives, to review this. And thank you for staff for doing the research. That's it. Thanks very much again.
Thank you, Mr. Garber.
Our next guest is Ashley on Zoom. Ashley, you can unmute your microphone and speak for 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Ashley. I currently have a reservation at 235 South Wagner Street, a part of the Ann Arbor Community Land Trust Homes. This has been a nonprofit organization that is working on building housing for employees of Washtenaw County, which is an amazing it's an amazing resource that can dramatically help others, and it'll definitely offer stability, security, and opportunity for individuals. Right now, we are trying to get the prices approved on those. I think it's very important that the affordable prices do stay the same, considering people's government wages and how they do not match with inflation. Also, we are trying to get an ADU ordinance revision because we are only allowed to build for 600 square feet when we are wanting the 800 square feet. I think everybody applying for this housing, they work hard to support themselves, and it's very hard to match living costs and wages. It's very challenging to afford a safe and stable living environment. So I think this nonprofit organization will bring a lot of great things to employees and bring them to the community that they work in. And I would be grateful for the chance to demonstrate my commitment for being a responsible and contributing member of the community. We ask that these approval processes be expedited because many of us are eager to begin the next chapter in our lives in our new homes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There are no additional guests with their hands raised. I believe we can move on. There is an additional public comment period at the end of the meeting.
At the end, yes. Great, thank you. So I will close the first public comment period and we will move on to agenda item 3A, a petition to amend section 5.16.6.d, accessory dwelling units, submitted by the Ann Arbor Community Land Trust. And I believe we will start with a presentation by the petitioner.
Let me just interrupt for 1 minute. We have 3 items on our agenda tonight, and the ORC meetings are scheduled for 2 hours. So that means we'll need to keep each one to about 35 minutes. I'll try to be mindful of the time. But yeah, we do need to keep each discussion to about 35 minutes. And did you mention this in the opening remarks that the Ordinance Revisions Committee is a committee? They provide some advice and some feedback, but they make no binding decisions. They are a resource. They are a resource to provide some advice and guidance on whether a petition should move forward as is, whether it should be substantially revised, minimally revised, or whether they do not feel a petition would have much chance of success. But no matter the recommendations, things can move on and can move forward. Tonight's meeting has 2 items that are looking towards going for a public hearing at the Planning Commission, maybe in August or September. And 1 item that really just needs some feedback. It is still in the preparation stage. That's it.
Thank you.
All right. So we have Sarah Lorenz, who is a is the applicant for an accessory dwelling unit petition. Ms. Lorenz, we invite you to speak to the committee. I almost said commission, to the committee for up to 5 minutes.
Okay. Is there a way for me to show my slides?
I think I can promote you to a panelist. Yes. You'll have to. Here we go. Got it.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Okay, let me share my slides here. Okay, can you see that now?
Yes, we can. If you can make it like a tiny bit bigger, because we're kind of seeing your whole, I don't know, I feel like you can increase the zoom.
Is that better?
Nah, yeah, I think it might have opened, like, did it open in another window that you're not sharing?
Yeah. Hang on 1 sec. Let me start.
This slide is totally fine, but I'm worried I see slides with smaller,
Okay.
and I'm very blind.
Okay. Is that
That's
better?
great. Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I will try to be quick. My name is Sarah Lorenz. I'm the Executive Director of the Ann Arbor Community Land Trust. We have been working for quite a long time to find a way to build affordable home ownership in Ann Arbor. Our request, I'd just like to state this to begin with. Our request is for a revision to the ADU ordinance so that we can create a category for permanently affordable homes on a parcel. Both the primary home and the accessory dwelling unit home would be permanently affordable. And we would like both of them to be allowed to have 1,232 square feet if they are 2 stories, plus an unfinished basement. And so this would create quite a bit of a change, but it is consistent with many other communities around the country that allow larger ADUs. And we think the dramatic benefits to our critical workers would support this change. We are trying to build this home that's pictured right here. This is a particularly cost-effective type of home. And so really it's the square footage on 2 stories that we're looking for and not the 1,700 square feet of floor area. We do agree with the staff report that the floor area is confusing, especially to the public who might not know what floor area is. But it does, floor area includes the basement, and many of our homeowners would really like to have a basement for storage. A2CLT provides permanent affordability. So these homes, would probably have a life of 150 years and they would be affordable to future employees. This is our board. We've been working on this approach for over 6 years now. We do want to build many homes and lots of different kinds of homes, not just accessory dwelling units, but that's where we need to start right now as a startup nonprofit developer. So the formula that we've come up with is to build small homes, hire a large home building company that has volume discounts, apply for MSHDA grants and housing TIF from the city and county, and to build 2 homes on every lot. That's key to the affordability. So I wanted to point out that we have precedents here in the community. Here's an existing 1,275 square foot home on Mulholland Avenue with a lot of less than 4,000 square feet. But unfortunately, right now it's valued at $630,000. We would like to build a very similar home and be able to sell that for $125,000 to $325,000. On Snyder and Stadium, we have these 2-unit homes that can sell separately. They have even smaller lots with a 0 lot line, and we would like to do something similar. So we would like this type of home to be legal again. We discovered that a local company, Norfolk Homes, is building these small homes in Jackson and in Pontiac for under $200,000. And so we're very jealous, and we want to build at least 100 homes here in the same price range. So you see this is a lovely design. It's very popular with our potential buyers. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, and a very small footprint. But you'll see the problem here in Ann Arbor is that the average lot is at least $150,000, often more. Even when we do this modest construction, we're going and have no profit as the developer, we're going to have a home cost of at least $450,000. If we're able to put 2 homes on one lot, one is the primary and one is the accessory dwelling unit, we can get that cost down to $350,000 per home. And if we get grants,
1 minute remaining.
and if we get grants in housing TIF, we could get the price down to $125,000 and $225,000. So that is, I have other examples that I can send you this slide deck. And we have some response to the staff concerns about managing the affordability. We'd be happy to address that and the suggestion of R2 zoning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. We will now move on to our staff report.
I will, just in the interest of time, just say a quick few things. The staff report addresses the language that was submitted, and that's included in the packet, and then the letter that the A2CLT is sent is also included. Staff report goes through the development of the ADU ordinance in Ann Arbor, and then gets to some of staff's concerns with the proposed language. Namely that the increased size doesn't meet the intent of the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. Also concerns about the broad applicability of the language and how it may conflict with other areas of code. And then also concerns both the planning staff and the city attorney have concerns about using deed restrictions as a means of enforcement for ensuring affordability. So overall, staff recommends that the applicant move forward with rezonings rather than this text amendment to achieve their goals. And I will just leave it at that.
Thank you. Okay, so by my clock, we have about the 35 minutes, 7:45 for discussion of this item. Questions do we still have the petitioner?
Yes, I have moved them to attendee, but they can speak and I can also move them back.
I think maybe do that just in case there are like specific questions.
Okay.
Does anybody want to kick us off?
Sure. Do I need to raise my hand?
Nah, just go ahead.
This is a question for staff. So I read the staff report and I read the applicant's the memo that was attached to the docket. The staff memo makes mention of some conflicts with the existing code. As I read it, though, the conflicts that we're talking about don't appear to be actual like a legal conflict that I would think of, 2 sections of the code that actually cannot be reconciled in a way that would create a conflict between what the petitioner is proposing and what this would do. It's more of a conflict in terms of intention and purpose. Do I have that right?
Since I'm unmuted, I'll answer. It's not a legal conflict that they're in polar opposites, but it's more of a dimensional standard conflict, as well as the intention and the purpose.
When you say dimensional standard conflict, that I take that to mean these are very large ADUs. There are lots of lots where this wouldn't work. there's sort of a, like when I read the staff memo, I was seeing these are very big and not exactly what we intended. And then also there's workability issues that the petitioner may or may not have thought through, like a lot of lots this won't work on, that type of thing. Is that what you mean, or is there something more specific?
No, we do, that's all of that.
Mhm.
Plus, the petitioner is pretty clear and straightforward and is really, has a clear vision of what they want, but this would be applicable citywide for every single family lot. And we don't, and it's the broad applicability of this very narrowly proposed amendment that, that we have issue and concern with. And that's why it's too broad to be useful for the community. It would raise more conflicts than it would help in the big picture.
I see. Okay.
Commissioner Norton.
I saw, Ms. Lauren, you kind of skipped over the slide that said, here's why we don't think rezoning works. And I'm wondering if you could just tell us why you're thinking rezoning won't work.
Yes, we intend to build a lot of homes. We hope to build a lot of homes. And so we don't want to have to do rezoning every time we purchase a parcel. Because that adds significant amount of time, it adds a significant amount of cost. We're trying to absolutely keep the costs down as much as possible. And the other big issue, well, there are some small issues. We looked at rezoning with the current parcels that we have, but many of this type of parcel is pretty deep. And so 2 of our parcels, we could have 3 lots deep. And so you need a private driveway to reach those. But I think that Mr. Leonard told us that an R2 lot can't be serviced. 3 deep R2 lots can't be serviced by a private drive. So then we're pushed into doing a private road with curbs and sidewalks and lights. So that increased the cost and the complexity as well. And we just liked the simplicity of being able to purchase a lot and then have this stock plan that's very flexible. We have two or three more that are smaller, but to have these stock plans ready to go where we could very quickly file for building permits. The other thing is that we really have constraints on our financing. We're a startup nonprofit. We have very little capital. It's very difficult to purchase land. And so the banks that we've talked to and explained and asked for assistance in lending to purchase property, they don't want to lend on a speculative project that needs rezoning. The other exciting opportunity that we have is we have so many buyers. We have hundreds of buyers who can't afford to live here, but they actually have a down payment saved. And we could put together 2 buyers with down payments and get construction loans for them. But if they're going to have to do rezoning and face neighborhood opposition, they don't want to risk their down payments to purchase property and then have to wait months and months and have an uncertain outcome. So this solution, after a lot of banging our heads against the wall, the idea of using the ADU ordinance and having a larger ADU like many other cities and states seemed like a really good solution for the near future to allow us to build dozens or even 100 homes in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for laying all of that out. I'll just make a comment. I totally love what you guys are doing, and I'm really want to encourage you to keep going and support you. I'm really nervous about this as the fix, though, to help you get there, because Mr. Stolberg keeps reminding us over and over again that good planners and zoners should think ahead about the unintended consequences you might get when you make an easy fix to serve one party that could come back and bite you in multiple ways. And this just sounds to me like a ripe chance for that to happen. So that and what you're proposing really wouldn't be conceptually accessory dwelling units. They would be multiple homes on a single lot, which I actually think could be quite workable. So I think the better approach would be to come up with a zoning category that does what you're doing, that doesn't try and distort ADUs into being what ADUs aren't. Or if it really does make sense to tweak the ADU provisions, then there need to be some other things built in to make sure it doesn't come back and create perverse outcomes in places where it wouldn't really work or wouldn't be ideal. So just changing the square footage by itself, I think would be problematic. You'd want to go through and figure out what other things need to be put in place to make this quite workable. So I totally get that you're anxious to move forward, and there are a lot of people willing to move, and so I don't want to drag this out any more than it needs to be, but it seems to me like there still needs to be some thought put into this, that this would be a blanket change that would just be too problematic for what it could open the door to without thinking through carefully unhappy consequences. So I hate to say keep banging your head against the wall, but let's keep thinking through how to do what you're trying to do in a way that won't potentially be so disruptive.
Yeah, we're very open to dialogue and brainstorming how to tweak this to make it workable and not to have any perverse outcomes. Right now, we're not aware of any competition in the affordable home ownership realm. And we think that putting in that provision that requires the homes to be permanently affordable would be very strong, and that there would not be an onslaught of these homes. We have been workshopping this with many people with planning background among our supporters and trying to think things through. So we really need to build homes, or we can't sustain ourselves as an organization if we can't build anything.
Yeah,
we need to find a way forward.
Yeah, I get that. And I'm happy to kind of keep noodling on this, but right now I'm like, wow, would be a big change that could have huge ramifications and need to think it through. So thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Mills, and before you talk, I'm just gonna say, I want this, since we have such a packed agenda, I want to try to, and I know it's hard on Zoom, but keep us to Robert's rules. So Commissioner, Ms. Lawrence, will ask specific questions of you to respond to if needed. Okay, Commissioner Mills.
So similarly, I think the thing that I'm struggling with is defining this as accessory. We had a conversation that wasn't necessarily about ADUs, but also about home occupations and what is kind of an accessory occupation. And in my mind, the idea that this would that the accessory unit would be smaller than the primary use in my mind seems to make sense. And so actually that's one of the things that I'm struggling with, is that you would have two units that would effectively be the same thing. Similarly, this is the kind of housing stock that I think we need on the size of lot that we that will be useful in this space. And so I'm curious if instead of using ADUs, instead there's something for affordable single-family dwellings or affordable units, that being the change in lots of places, to not be accessory, not allow them as an accessory, but to allow an additional unit if that unit is affordable. Or if both units are affordable. I don't know, again, I haven't thought about this enough to know how that might work. I don't know, to be real honest, that changes how the attorney's office is going to feel about this because of the deed restriction. And at the same time, we do have other things that we say about within our UDC for affordability and how we show affordability and what it gets if you're building affordable units. And so I also don't, I'm less swayed by that side of this. I don't know that ADU is the place for it. Given what we want to do, and particularly knowing what we might be talking about is 2 units that are exactly the same, that just doesn't feel like an accessory dwelling unit thing to me. I think that there's room in my mind for reconsidering what our number is. I did read that 1,700 was in the initial letter. That is not accessory. I feel well, it might be accessory in some areas, but in much of the city, that is larger than the existing building would be. And so, again, thinking through how that works is something that I feel like takes a little bit more time than I don't know that that's the fastest solution right now. And so I would also kind of encourage us thinking about maybe there is just a different accommodation that we give to affordable units and how we are thinking about the number of units on a lot. Maybe that introduces though even more problems. I don't but in the idea of other solutions. I want to see this kind of housing stock. I get that actually our lot minimums have been exclusionary and are part of the problem about why we're not getting it. And so I think that I don't know that this is the right solution personally.
Commissioner Adams.
I enthusiastically support this. So I think that the proposal is a creative regulatory solution to permit a type of housing that we've heard from council and the community that they want. I think this is actually one of the few initiatives in our pipeline right now that is getting support. You know, we're hearing from folks who don't normally call into support housing to say that they support this process, they support these units, they support this organization. I think we ought to be using the law to try to say yes to what they're asking for. I believe them when they're saying rezoning is not a viable solution to build what they're trying to build. I think if we're going to oppose something like this, we really ought to have a really high burden to articulate a reason. That's why I asked earlier about conflicts. I'd be very interested to hear about an actual adverse consequence that we should expect, an actual conflict with another part of the code that's not reconcilable. I think there are always unintended consequences to changes to law. The concerns that I'm hearing just frankly kind of smack of like formalism, right? Like planning. I understand that this sort of flies in the face of how we typically think about, you know, zoning and planning, but I'm a generalist lawyer. I'm looking at this from that lens. And if a petitioner comes in and proposes something that they think will make it easier for them to do a thing that we want, then just from a perspective of a body that's advising the legislative branch, we ought to be saying, all right, well, let's pressure test that, but we should be trying to say yes. You know, more specifically, I think the staff report raises a lot of interesting policy questions. Is it good to create a hard to enforce exemption? I mean, that's valid. I hear that. Is it okay for an accessory unit to be indistinguishable from the primary? Yeah, that's a good question. But a lot of this stuff feels like a policy question that we ought to be saying, all right, well, if council doesn't like that, then they can say no. But just from at least from the ORC's perspective, I don't see anything wrong with the proposal, and I'd be happy to say yes to it if it came to planning.
So I guess for me, I think this is great. I have more questions than like answers at this point. Why would I have any answers? I keep going back to, well, first of all, I'm gonna ask Steph a procedural question. Like, hearing what you've heard so far, like what would you take as the next step? Like, are you looking to us to say, yes, bring this ahead to Planning Commission? Or are you looking for us to say, this needs a lot more thinking, so go back to the drawing board?
Are you speaking to me?
No, I'm speaking to staff.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I wasn't sure.
I know what you want us to do.
Okay, sorry.
As a submitted petition, you know, I like to say everyone is entitled to their day in court. So this will continue as far as the petitioner would like it to continue.
Okay.
But based on some of this feedback, you know, that's illustrative. If petitions are withdrawn before they receive a public hearing notice, then you get a 50% refund. So this is an important step and an important feedback, both in whether the applicant would like to continue on, and then also, you know, what feedback on revisions or changes, how could it be strengthened? This all is good validation as well. But this will continue on as long as the petitioner would like it to continue to the end.
Got it. Thank you. So I just keep thinking about like, and I don't want to just like obviously push this down the road. I fully understand our housing crisis and affordability issues and how long it takes to build everything and just like how long the process takes. I just keep thinking about like the comprehensive land use plan and when that's implemented and when we eventually rezone, just hypothetically say that we allow up to 3 units or 4 units or whatever it becomes in all residential zones. Does that eliminate this issue? And I guess that's also a question to staff. And I'm asking you to think hypothetically, I'm sorry, but like if we rezoned and allowed more than 1 unit per lot, would this effectively take care of this? Because would the zoning allow for what the petitioner is asking for? I guess is my question. And I know we don't have that zoning.
I mean, theoretically, if you could have more than 1 unit on lots of different kinds of lots, and then yes, they could build these units. And the size restrictions would, go to the zoning rather than whatever the ADU amendment says.
Theoretically, if we have that zoning and you have say a duplex or 2 homes on 1 lot, and then I assume they're somehow individually purchased. It sounds like that's sort of the model. Are the lots split, I guess is one question, but then what happens with the ADU ordinance if it's 2 separate lots? I guess I'm getting into like really technical details, but like I'm just trying to wrap my head around like, say it passes through and we're like, yes, fine. The ADU can be the same size as the house, and then they're purchased. Is it still 1 lot or is it 2 lots? Because then if it's 2 lots, is that other lot allowed an ADU again? Like, how does this, am I making sense?
I think I'm getting a little confused, so I'm going to try and answer the question, and if it's not the answer, you can let me know.
It's okay. I had like 10 questions in there. Go ahead.
Well, so in general, the lot wouldn't have to be split, but the ownership would have to be condoed or something along those lines for this to work and for them to be sold separately like any other duplex on any other lot. Maybe Alexis, you have deeper insight, but I don't know what would happen to the ADU ordinance exactly. That's something that we would have to consider if the zoning changes completely and all of a sudden you can have more units on lots that you could have just a 1 unit and an ADU currently.
Same. It's too soon to tell because it all depends on how it's crafted. There is certainly a large possibility that these will become non-conforming, but this wouldn't be exclusive to this. There might be, depending on the scope of changes, a lot of things might become non-conforming, or maybe these become totally conforming. It's kind of too soon to tell because we don't know how that's going to be crafted. It's just
yeah. Well, it makes more sense to me if it's condoed, so it's not split.
That's one of the things that these you can have buildings be separately owned, but to meet the zoning standards, there's no land divisions, there's no 0 lot line. We don't currently have that. The 2 structures could be individually owned, but the land must be commonly owned to maintain its conformity with the zoning ordinance and to maintain its conformity with the lot area, minimum lot area, and minimum lot area per dwelling unit. Which sort of speaks to how difficult it is that what they are proposing are either 2 separated single family homes per lot or a duplex in a single family district. The dimensional standards just aren't really set up well for that. That they were crafted for another district.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that gets to sort of the heart of why with the comprehensive plan right now, we're trying to allow for these types of units within single family residential districts. And I find it interesting that I've heard a lot of support for the community land trust from public commenters. And I've heard those same public commenters say that they don't want to see 4 units on a lot. And what you showed 3 and 4 units on a lot that looked great. So that was just an interesting like irony. Any other last comments? We have a few more minutes. Commissioner Norton.
I'll I'm going to push back on Commissioner Adams a little bit. I don't see this as an exercise in formalism. There's a reason you have definitions and concepts and try and make sure things have some logic to them and a purpose for provisions. And I think this would just be distorting ADUs beyond what an ADU would be, or it would open the door for that and create problems like you were just bringing up with ownership issues and such. And I kind of like Commissioner Mills broaching the idea of maybe the better way to do this is to create an affordable, permanently affordable home provision in the zoning code that would say, if you have lot sizes of this size and under these conditions, you can as of right do this. And now you can lay out in a more clear detail under what conditions does this work, and for what purpose and how would it work, and have that be a new provision that would make sense. And you could kind of think through these issues up front instead of kind of tweaking the ADU things and then having to go back and sort through, oh my gosh, what did we just do and how will this work? So I guess I'm encouraging you, Ms. Lawrence, to think about that approach. How could we, so I totally get you don't want to do a parcel by parcel rezoning, and I completely understand why. I think there might be another way to do what you're trying to do that wouldn't distort what ADUs are all about, and would kind of think through better. I mean, presumably you need to have a minimum lot size to do two homes like you're thinking. It can't be that you could build that on every lot in the city. There are some lots that are just too small. So what are kind of the minimum conditions where this would work? Kind of lay that out, and under what provisions would you want to put in place, and then adopt a zoning code amendment that says, if these conditions are met, you can do this and not have to rezone over and over again. I think that would be a cleaner and a better way to kind of conceptualize and move forward on this proposal than to throw a tweak into the ADU provisions. My two thoughts.
Commissioner Mills.
I would just say, thank you for like better articulating the thing that I had in mind. The reason further that I think that would be offer even more flexibility, because then you could have that in the same districts that you're naming, but you might then not have to worry about the number of persons. This is like in the staff report. Like, I think it frees you from a lot of that. And it allows us to have this conversation. Like, you're clearly articulating, you even have plans of what you want to build. Here are the rules, right? Like, and it allows us to say, like, this is the thing. I think it'll be clearer, rather than being kind of an accessory dwelling unit. I think that we should just have a conversation about, do we want kind of income restricted housing according to these criteria to be added into our existing, into those existing districts. So, and again, hopefully then it gives you guys more flexibility.
Any final thoughts? Commissioner Adams? Yes.
Don't change a thing. Bring it in. I'll vote for it.
I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I want to do whatever we can do, the fastest we can do it, but within like boundaries that make sense with everything else that we're doing. Yeah, I would say definitely bring this, and maybe talk to staff about the idea that Commissioner Mills and Commissioner Norton, if you haven't already, broached, because I kind of like that approach too. All right. I think we will move on to where we have 3B. Planner Delio, keep me in check.
Yep, B comes after
Okay.
A.
Thank you. Bicycle parking requirements and standards analysis. We are starting with a staff presentation. Is that also by Planner Mellon Corcoran?
So we're back with bike parking. The staff report kind of goes through what staff has done since we last met in January, thinking about the things that we talked about last time at the ORC, looking at the parking multipliers, keeping all 3 bicycle parking classes and adding some kind of design standards, while focusing on the pain points and trying not to make things overcomplicated or over regulatory. So staff report goes through some of the community meetings that we had, and some of the points that were brought up during those meetings. Also some of the site visits that happened, and just staff comments on those visits and conversations that were had on site with property managers, people of that kind. And then just review of some of the documents, particularly the Downtown Development Authority's new bike parking guidelines, the essentials of bike parking from the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals, and the bike parking guidelines from the City of Boston. So there is some more specific language that is attached in the packet, but I'll just generally thinking about general parking requirements. There is a proposed simplified table with some new multipliers in there, and there's also a table in the staff report that goes through the current requirements with the current multipliers, and then what happens with the proposed multipliers, so that you can kind of see what that difference is. We got some requests for racks to accommodate bikes of various sizes, so there is some language that speaks to that. Talked about the multipliers, and then some more specific language. Staff is constantly asked questions about if in-unit parking counts towards requirements. So there is more specific language that proposes that it doesn't count. In terms of location, adding language for where bicycle parking should be located on sites, particularly on larger sites where it should be spread out, especially if there are multiple main entrances. And adding kind of some specific distances for Class B and C from those main entrances. For design, there's some language just to generally make things more user-friendly and hopefully not too overly complicated. And these are particularly for the Class A bike parking, and particularly in downtown structures where we're getting a lot of those kind of site plans, and we're having issues with staff reviewing Class A bike rooms and saying if they are approvable or not. So there's some language about access and things like that. And again, what kind of racks are appropriate or not appropriate. And there's also just some general comments about things that staff decided not to move forward on, or things that might also be looked into a bit further if we decide to go further or just in the future. Yeah, happy to answer questions and hear comments as well.
Thank you. So I assume we are just providing feedback on, is this another, I'm sorry, it's been a day. Is this another, this will move on to the full commission at some point. So we're providing feedback on what you would put in these. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anyone like to start? Commissioner Mills.
First of all, thank you for all of the research that went into this. Thank you for the photographs. One of the questions that I had, like, as you were, when I saw the table, was like, well, where are these? And like the staff report addressed that. So I think that this was like a lot of great research, both in terms of like physically going and seeing where it's being used as a storeroom, which may not like it. Part of that is because there's not a demand. And so the question is like, why is there not demand? Is it where it is in the building? Is it that it is too much? And I mean, I think that you did really good work in trying to triangulate between what you were hearing from users of these facilities or potential users of the facilities by doing your interviews with the bike community and what you were seeing. And also, the other thing that I would just say is like, as I was reading through what bicyclists would like to see, and I count myself in that, also recognizing like some of the things that were being asked for, like this is expensive, like high demand real estate, right? And so I think that where you landed did a really good job balancing that. I appreciated the transparency in terms of which of the comments, the recommendations address and which ones they don't. The only one that confused me a little bit, and I think I get what you're saying, but I'm not quite sure about the wording. And sorry that I don't have air traffic control tonight to be able to do it, is like the bicycle spaces. This is number 6 in one of the lists, so that's not so helpful. Bicycle spaces must be evenly spaced throughout the site at entrances or gathering spaces. And when I first read that, I was like, wait, no, we want them. Like, I think I think the intention is when there are multiple buildings, that it's not only in one building or something, like, or multiple entrances, we're thinking about multiple entrances. And I think that makes sense. There was something about the language that initially threw me off, being like, no, we don't want it evenly everywhere. We do want it where people are going to use it, which tends to be by the entrances. And so I think that you've got yourself covered later on through that. And I read the track changes version because, like, yeah, that's the one. So I think that this is good work. I'm really torn, to be honest, about the electric bike. What we're hearing, both we know that there's increasing demand and kind of concern from building operators. And so I'm not an electric bike owner myself, so I don't know, like, if they all have removable batteries that you can take them to your unit and plug in or not. I confess that I should know how that works and I don't. And so that we don't address that now, I think is reasonable. But anyway, kudos is my assessment.
Thank you.
I'm a new e-bike owner. I just want to brag on myself because I finally bought a bike. Guys, where's Planner Shake when I need her to hear this? I think most batteries are removable. Commissioner Norton.
I just have a couple of quick questions. You've done a lot of work here and it seems very thorough to me. I'm just wondering if you also talk to some of the building owners about their thoughts on these requirements and how much of a burden it would be to them. And I think there's maybe a chicken and egg problem. Like, if some of the spaces aren't being that fully occupied, is it because they're in the wrong place or there isn't enough of them? And if providing more, would that encourage more people to do biking? Or could we be heading down the road of requiring a whole lot of biking space, building in biking spaces that just end up not really getting used? So I'm imagining you've thought about those in the work that you did. I was just curious if you could speak to those.
Yeah. So in terms of building ownership and management, yes, we did talk to them on site visits, and maybe there could be more conversations to have with them before this moves forward. But yes, we did, and that one of the e-bike concern was there. I think generally we were in the downtown, and mostly what people were saying, what the building management was, people aren't asking about bike rooms. They don't want bicycle parking. That's at least that's their perspective, and so they kind of see it as not necessarily a waste of space, but just not a space that's not well used. Can you remind me your second question?
Well, I think you just hit it. Like, I think there is probably a chicken and egg thing here. Like, applicants aren't thinking about bikes, but if they get there and they realize there's a place to park a bike and it would be convenient, they maybe would use it. And it could be that just we're not going to solve that until we start building or having folks add more biking space and make it available. I will see on the e-bike thing, you might talk to the fire chief. That's a real concern. At least I understand anecdotally, like in New York City, it's people who recondition batteries imprudently that end up catching fire. And once a lithium battery catches fire, it's really hard to put it out. So that's not an unreasonable concern for us to be thinking about. Just a thought. Thank you for your work on this.
Yeah, and I'll just say one more thing, which is, yes, I agree that there is a kind of a chicken and egg situation. I will say that some of the bike rooms that we visited were very well placed. As a bicyclist, I thought, wow, this is a really great location. And I guess my personal takeaway was less about the location of the bike room, and rather than the types of racks that were used, because if you saw the inverted U racks, those were pretty much all taken up. If you saw the ones that were a little bit more complicated, the double deckers, the vertical, those were not as well used. So that was my personal takeaway, but I do think that there were some good locations. It could be that there's already enough parking. It could be that they're bad locations. Hard point to pin down. And yes, I do think that a conversation with the fire marshal would be worth it if we're moving forward with any kind of e-bike parking.
I'll jump in real quick. This is really good work. So thank you very much for all the work you put into this. On sort of like on that last point, actually on the last 2 points, how would you on the e-bikes, like how would you restrict, like how do you even enforce that? Like it would be almost like you can't park e-bikes in this bike room unless you take your battery with you. I just don't even like, they're not, I mean, right now, I don't know, did you see e-bikes in the rooms that you guys toured?
Not e-bikes, but we did see electric scooters that were plugged in rooms that did have
Oh.
outlets.
Interesting. Do you know if there's any sort of like fire protection in those rooms? I wonder if is that anything required for bike rooms?
There's nothing specifically required for bike rooms. It depended, some of them, because they're bike storage, they're in the garage where it's all CMU.
Right.
And so by nature, it's a little bit less, it's more fireproof, but nothing specific.
I would second the talk to the fire marshal. And I'm curious, I guess, like, I'm sort of also thinking now about this like chicken and egg thing, like how, like they were like the locations that you saw that were well used were like well positioned in the buildings, but like, was it easy to access the room from, like, imagine yourself with a bike, like, was it just like behind like a dingy door? Did it create like a sense of, I don't know, because there's this thing with like, you create stairways that are like open and nice, and people will more likely default taking the stairs rather than doing the elevator. If you have the elevator like right up front and the stairs are hidden, people are going to take the elevator, even if it's just going up like one flight of stairs. And I'm wondering if there's any sort of like psychological thing with bike rooms where it's like, put it behind like a glass door and make it nice, and then maybe people will like think about using them or something, or buying a bike, or like, look at this, like, was there any notable, I'm just more curious rather than anything, like, I think these changes are great. Was there anything notable that you saw? Because I think, and then there's like the infrastructure and like all of that, but like, now that I have a bike, I'm trying to think like, how am I going to ride it? And like, what's going to be the easiest thing for me to do? And so like, if I'm moving into an apartment and there's a bike room, like, how do I want it? Like, what's the best one you saw? Like, was there anything like special about it?
Yes, there was one. Let me see if I can remember which building it was in on Huron.
Foundry you talked about in the report.
Was the one across the street from the Foundry.
The
Hub? Is that the Hub?
I think it's the Varsity at 425 East Washington, maybe.
Yeah, it was the Varsity. That one had a great bike room, at least in terms of location. It wasn't perfect. There were, structural columns in there that made it hard to maneuver your bike. But in terms of location, which I think is generally what a lot of the language changes go for, like there was just one door straight out from the sidewalk. So you could get directly into your bike room, and then the door on the other side led directly to the elevator so that you could get up to your apartment. Like that was great. There were still bikes in there that hadn't been touched in months. And granted, we went in March, so there are lots of different factors. But there are bike rooms that exist that it had a nice door, it was labeled, it was easily accessed, things like that. And so hopefully the language is trying to push people to a point where it's saying, like the doors should be self-opening, and there shouldn't be more than two, to push people to the point where the pathways to get to the bike rooms are nice and are easy, so that kind of enforces the behavior. but yeah, I mean, a lot of it is also behavioral. So this is kind of trying to do the most that we can do without doing too much to encourage people to do more biking.
Yeah, I mean, because yeah, if you make it easy for people to do it, it's like it's on your way out of the building. You just pop through the room. I lived in a building where it was like in a garage, like underground. It's like I would have never gotten a bike out of there. It's like way too inconvenient. Any other feedback? Otherwise, I think did we see you at the regular meeting at some point when this gets scheduled on our calendar?
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll put it on the schedule.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to item number 3C. On-site development signage. An overview of the previously and currently required information and notices is provided, as well as research on physical format and timing of information shared by other communities. Staff seek feedback from the ORC on when additional information should be provided and its format, considering how the current requirements have been amended. We will have first start with a staff presentation from Charlie Collins.
Hello all, nice to meet you. My name is Charlie. I'm a zoning coordinator since December of last year in the planning department. And with the help of Alexis and Hank Kelly, we wrote this memo. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of the reasoning and ideas. Mainly just hear some general feedback and where to go from here. So with the recent changes to the citizen participation and public notices, this memo aims to streamline these on-site signage postings aim to streamline the development process, but because of the reduced number of type and notifications residents will receive from here on out, this created a need for another way to keep community informed. So maybe Alexis could speak to some of those changes that will be happening regarding public hearings, as far as mailings and published posted notices.
So as a wrap up in a summary, sorry, I'm gonna apologize for my words, but we have changed a variety of sections of code, and in total, what it means is there will be fewer direct mailings and placards posted on sites advertising public hearings. And we are approaching you about what to do, if anything, about these gaps. And we know that the intention of changing these procedures was not much to have less information and less engagement overall. It was to allow projects to be a little bit more efficient, to reduce the time required to get a project to an agenda. Public hearings require a lot of notice and take time. As mentioned in the staff report, a summary of the changes include that there will be a literal area of land that no longer receive any notice of a site plan coming at them. That would be site plans that have no other attachment, site plans that are not associated with the rezoning, or site plans that are not associated with the special exception use. But the ones that are more than 500 feet won't be notified about that meeting, and they're also too far away to get a postcard notice. Mail notices will also no longer be sent by city staff about a public hearing at the planning commission meeting, and the published notice won't appear in the newspaper. Although, to be honest, I'm not sure how many people are getting their sole source of information about the public hearing notices. And then that placard will not be put up on the site. Now we can address these in a variety of different ways. And I guess I'll turn it over to, but those were the gaps that we thought about filling. And we can do it a variety of ways, and frankly, it could be done by other entities than staff, but that was the gaps.
Just picking up from there, so pretty much the question is, how do we ensure residents are still informed and able to engage meaningfully in development decisions? So in the staff report, there's a table provided of cities that do have code regarding community on-site development signage. Although admittedly, a lot of cities don't. Seems more of like maybe volunteering, like asking developers on a voluntary basis to place these. But cities that do, Portland, Seattle, and Toronto listed in that table seem to stand out for their clear and informative on-site signage. Often these include project renderings, contact info for the developer, the planner assigned, and then as well as the public hearing date, whenever that may be. In addition to perhaps how many dwelling units or the zoning district, landscape changes. There's a whole list, and in the staff report, we listed, we have some bullet points there of sort of the basic options, but there could be other requirements too. And then there's other cities like Boise, University Park, Charlotte that do have code, although leave it more open-ended for the developer in terms of content. So, yeah, moving towards the bottom of the report here, mainly what we wanted to get your thoughts on are which types of projects might be required for the postage of these signs, what kinds of content, what you might be included, and then ensuring consistency. So some of these cities actually provide a city provided template that all the developers use rather than each developer having their own design. So ultimately, just want to strike a balance between simplifying our procedures and maintaining transparency and public awareness. So looking forward to your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to kick us off? Commissioner Mills, would you like it to be you? Since I know you're super excited about this one.
I am super excited about this one, and I think consistency and keeping it simple is actually going to make the thing that's more evergreen. I would suggest that in the situation of people who used to get, well, in the kind of projects that used to require sending the postcard, like effectively those ones that were type 1 projects that moved out, though I think that those certainly we want to have this. If there is something that at all is going to come before us, being planning commission, even though not a public hearing, like I think that we want, like that's the minimum. I think making it simple for developers with a template, and honestly on that, I think that we had a template for postcards, or maybe the world just decided on the template for postcards that was like very simple. Here's what's being planned. Here's where it is. And also then the big QR code about where you can go to track it to those, you know, to whatever, whichever of the things we think is easiest. And I confess, I don't know which of the 3 ways that people can track will be easiest. Where they can learn more about the project, right? Because of what's in the application, and or where it is in the development pipeline. That's what I would like. I would make sure that it's easy for people who are driving by to be able to get that from that. But I don't think having too much information, like you say, means that people can't actually read it. So I would make the print big. And effectively the basics, and let people who are interested go online. And I think just standardizing it, and so in that way maybe being more prescriptive will be simpler. That's my 2 cents.
Commissioner Norton.
I'll confess, I haven't been doing this long enough to have a good sense of the kinds of projects that Tripp notices and what they involve, but my sense is that the things that you would want to put a sign up in front of a building and say something's going to happen here are when something is happening that's dramatically different than what's there right now. That's going to be what catches people's attention. And maybe that's the kinds of project that Commissioner Mills was just describing. The other piece of information that I would definitely ask you to include is some statement regarding whether this change is by right or discretionary. And if it's a by right site plan approval, then the placard should say, this is a by right development. Staff will be checking to make sure it complies with the laws, but we have no discretion to turn it down if the project owner satisfies the requirements, something like that. So that people don't have a sense that I can go kill this thing by getting it voted down because I don't like it. When in fact, if it's permitted by right, that decision was already made. If it's something that's discretionary where, maybe then you can say, go to this QR code to get more information or something like that. But I think having that little piece of information would be tremendously helpful. Other than that, I really like the idea of having roadside signs that let folks know, hey, something's going to happen here and we're trying to keep you apprised of that. And I think that'll be a way more effective than sending out postcards, is my sense.
Commissioner Adams, do you have
Thank
any
you. Thank you, by the
thoughts?
way, for the opportunity for us to give you feedback. I hope that's helpful.
No, I don't have any comments.
Okay. I'm equally as excited about this as I think Commissioner Mills is. I think here's a question, because now I don't remember from when I read this. This would apply, and I think the projects that Commissioner Mills mentioned are definitely correct, like the type 1 ones that we excluded. Even if a project is coming for a rezoning, would we still say you have to put up a sign? Yes, right? Okay, good. It's not just the ones that we're not doing the postcards for. Okay.
I didn't say
really
that, but like, I'm with you.
Yes. Like anything that comes before us, I think these signs, whenever I see them for like, it's like there's one at like Platt and Washington off, or like some custom home or something, but it's like, it's kind of cool. It's like, this is what it's going to look like. And like, so it could get people excited too. I think it does have to be like as simple as possible. Any thoughts about, I saw like you had in the table some things on like the materials, a template 100%. And I'm wondering too, if we could like, I don't know if the city has any sort of like relationship with like printers, like anything to make it easy and like cost effective for a developer to just like input information. I think that's with the postcards. It's like you can get somebody to like print it and do it for you. Like if we can just, so that this doesn't become something that's just like, oh my God, now they're making us do something else. It's like, okay, I can just like fill out this information. It populates the thing. I put in my credit card and I send it to the printer and then I go pick it up.
Yeah, to that note, we haven't done any further research into contractors. That's sort of the next step in my mind.
Okay.
Mainly just wanted to get your initial feedback. But yes, that is on the list of to-dos to sort of set up that pipeline if this moves forward.
Okay, awesome. I think this should definitely move forward as fast as possible. So I think we're all very much in support, and Alexis, are we just looking to like move it forward, or?
Yeah, but I do, if you don't mind, can I ask some questions of you guys?
Of course.
Yeah. So I think Charlie and I are clear on which projects, what type of projects. We'll pick up the ones that were dropped by the community participation change. But I'd like to ask about timing. So we have there's two information points. The applicants were generally responsible for the information provided at the time of application. And so some of that is dropping. And then the city provided notifications in the form of public notices at the time, just shortly before time of a meeting. would you like this new rules to be more mimicking what used to be done? Or would you like it more consistent? Like all of this stuff is required either A, at the time of application, or B, more towards the time of approval?
I think it's definitely important that, like, if for rezoning, which is a discretionary decision by the city council, then you want to have as much information to folks as early as possible, so they really can participate in the process.
Yeah.
If it's a by right site plan approval, I think it's useful to let folks know what's happening, but I don't know that it needs to happen so early on in the process. Is that helpful?
It is, and sort of as a side note, I think what Charlie and I are going to do is we're going to work on actual ordinance language, and then you'll be able to really say increase this, decrease this, and that's fine. But to help us craft that,
I mean, I would just say keep it consistent. Like if we're gonna do, say, one should be done like at the time of application, or I don't know if there's like an application accepted period. I don't remember how like it all works at the
Yeah.
front end, but definitely like the earlier the better. But I don't know that I would differentiate between the two types of projects just because it's just to keep it consistent. And I guess this actually is a really good reason to keep the signs like kind of like as basic as possible, because if information changes, like you can change what it links to on the QR code, you know, you can change the like detailed information, but you don't want to have to reprint an entire sign.
yeah.
If
Another
you do
question.
that, make sure it says, check this periodically because things may change.
That's true. Yeah.
Another question about what are your thoughts on size? Because, you know, the city used to signs and the city, they used to be orange and now they're white, but they're about like 11 by 17 piece of paper. I have seen, I'm sure we've all seen at least once some of the developer signs and they can be huge. What are you thinking for minimum size, just in a ballpark way? Are you thinking more along the size that the placards that the city would post, that we still will post when there's a rezoning or a legislative action, but for all the others, most of them are site plans. Are you thinking, should it be at all proportional, smallish, largish? I would imagine larger costs more money. And then Charlie, jump in.
Yeah, just to add on this, most municipalities that do have an ordinance pertaining to these signs, it's typically between like 20 square feet and 48 square feet. So like a 4x5 or a 6x8, somewhere in that range.
That's bigger than I am.
Yeah. And they're typically at least they're like between 4 and 6 feet from ground level, measured from ground to the bottom of the sign.
How are they mounted?
Usually a T-post, sometimes on a fence. It varies.
Okay. Commissioner Norton, then Commissioner Mills.
Just if we're gonna do this, I like, you know, looking at the staff memo that you did, the images of what Seattle requires or Portland. If we're gonna have them do on-site signs, that seems, which I think is probably Mr. Collins, what you were just pointing to, that I'm guessing that's kind of roughly that size. So certainly bigger than 11 by 17 inches. I think that's just too small. Maybe not as big as a honking big Seattle sign, but somewhere in the middle so that it will catch people's attention. And if they're really curious, they'll park safely on the side of the road and walk back to look at it.
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off, Ms. Mills, but usually there's a requirement that it's within the first 10 feet of a property, and some municipalities require it at like each entrance to a property or each street frontage or just one per property. But usually it's required to be right up on the public right of way, so it's designed for someone on the sidewalk or even driving past to just hop out quick and spend a couple minutes looking at it. Go ahead.
No problem. I similarly was thinking that 4x5 or 4x6 seemed the right ballpark and not out of line with what the others did. If we're going to do some research on printers, I am imagining that what people will have is some kind of material, like the corrugated plastic kind of thing that you talked about, the same things that like real estate folks do. I'm imagining that comes in some standard sizes. We should pick the standard, like, we want to be efficient with material use. And so just thinking about like a fraction or a multiple of that, I think, and not requiring something that's just weird to get. That'll keep the prices down. I also thank you for bringing up the like how many kind of things, because I know that was in there. My sense is if it's a honkin' big sign, one per property is plenty, like one per project. Particularly, I guess comes with a question. If you guys are noticing something for rezoning, you put 111 by 17. Is that right? Or like what does staff do?
Yeah. Well, we generally did one per the code was a little fuzzy in this area. And we did one per frontage, because we felt that was meeting the intent. It's unclear whether the minimum requirements were just one or one per lot because some projects include multiple lots. So we kind of did one per site. And one per street. And I'm sure some planners put up a few extra if they thought, oh, this is really long frontage, I'll just be extra nice and I'll put up some more or less. But yeah, I think it's reasonable. Maybe we'll start out with our draft language to be one per site frontage, and we'll see how that plays out or how that reads.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you guys probably have some internal, like, how you think about what is appropriate, and maybe like don't spend tons of time. 15 minutes of like, does this match kind of how we would make sense? And again, because it's so much bigger, I think that we could do with fewer. So yeah. I hope this saves developers money, like ultimately too, right? Rather than the postage of the postcards, like I'm hopeful that this is going to be a better way of getting word out that's actually more cost effective too.
Well, this doesn't replace, right? The postcards for
the handful of things where they were still doing postcards. Yeah. But like there were big postcards. I mean, there were radius before. Yeah.
I have two very niche things. Or very decent. Okay. So on the materials, for sure, is what you're saying is making me think like, would OSI have any sort of recommendation for like the best type of materials that could be like recyclable? Because now we're going to be like having all these signs up, and I don't know if maybe corrugated plastic is recyclable. I have no idea, but I think we should just like check with them to see if they've done any research on like the best type of material to use that isn't just going to like sit in a landfill for like 100 years. How does this interact with the sign ordinance? Are we good because it's like a temporary sign?
This would be separate of the sign ordinance.
Okay.
So it wouldn't impact like the max 200 square feet allowed per parcel. Two separate items.
Okay.
And then as far as the material goes, all the municipalities we looked into didn't have requirements for materials, but recommendations of corrugated plastic. Mainly, they were just worded along the lines of durable, weatherproof, flame retardant, and so on.
Flame retardant doesn't scream recyclability to me, but I get it. I think I think we should just ask for the. I don't want us to be putting some new requirement in place that then we're like undoing the good stuff that we're trying to do for sustainability. Did you have any other questions for us? Either of you?
Well, I'll just ask the question of Charlie. Do you think we have enough work with to craft a draft? First draft?
Yeah, I think so. I think the big question was kind of the timing and types of projects. So, yeah, that's really what I was curious to hear. The other details we can draft something and get more feedback, but this was more than I was anticipating. So,
We're very passionate about developer signs.
I was saying, so I will answer your question and say, I think we're good.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you, Charlie. It was nice to meet you.
same goes. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so look at us being efficient. We will now move on to item number 4, a second opportunity for public comment for individuals to speak for up to 3 minutes. So at this time, please press *9 on your phone or use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and the city staff will identify callers by the last 3 digits of their phone number or by their name.
The top of my list has the mayor of Lowertown. Mr. Mayor, you are free to unmute yourself and address the planning committee.
Thank you. This is Tom Stolberg. Yeah, I did that for the bicentennial. I got to figure out how to change that. Anyhow, I'm calling about the first item, and I want to thank you for your creative thinking, because this is going to need a creative solution. I read the staff report and listened to what the commissioners said, and I agree with the vast majority of that. Commissioner Norton did accurately paraphrase my thoughts on this type of thing and the ramifications of it. I am a fan of multiple units of duplexes, and those are a great way, owner-occupied duplexes, for people in the past. I've helped, bought my house that way and helped others do that as a broker. So this is kind of an extension of that, but it goes much further. I do believe in direct versus indirect solutions, and that this what the Ann Arbor Community Land Trust is trying to do is a very direct solution. And I also believe in conditional versus unconditional approaches. So in terms of unconditional upzoning that might happen after the new comprehensive land use plan and associated rezoning, that would increase the yield unconditionally on lots. And unfortunately for the Community Land Trust, it would no longer be able to compete with those lots. People who want to build more units at market rate would be able to pay much higher prices for the land once they get a higher yield, and A2CLT would just be priced out of being able to compete for those units. So how do we get there? It's going to take creative thinking to come up with something. And I don't have the answer for you, sorry. But thank you for a creative approach and a willingness to discuss it in that fashion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next guest is a caller with phone ending 134. You are free to unmute yourself and address the committee.
Thank you, Planner DeLeo. This is Ken Garber again. Thank you for the very thoughtful discussion on all 3 topics. I have a comment on signage. There's been sentiment expressed tonight and also at Planning Commission that for by right projects that the public be informed that these projects are not discretionary, that they meet code, and therefore there is that they will be approved. And this is difficult for me because I don't think that discretionary versus by right is a meaningful distinction in terms of public comment. I would agree with that if the UDC were a complete expression of the public's desires around development, but it's not. It falls short in the areas of affordability and sustainability, especially, for various reasons. But I'd be very concerned that the kind of statement that we're talking about on signage or on postcards or whatever medium will discourage public engagement when in fact, even for by right projects, I think we, the public, can make a large difference at, well, what were public hearings and as of yesterday are now public comment. And so while I acknowledge that there might be an occasional person who might go to a meeting and be confused if their comments are not incorporated into an actual site plan, I don't think there's many people that actually speak on by right projects and say, well, I don't like this project, so don't approve it. I think most comments are thoughtful, measured, and helpful, and that many are incorporated or accepted by developers, especially when amplified by Planning Commission at this kind of meeting. And so I would not support, the kind of language that would discourage more public engagement, and I think that would. And I think the public can make a difference in public comment, even for by right projects. And so, but overall, I learned a lot by tonight's discussions, and as the mayor of Lowertown said, it's a thorny problem on UDCs when it comes to the kind of housing that the land trust wants to build, which we all want to see go forward. Those are my comments. Thanks for all your work. I don't want to extend your night too long. Take care.
Thank you.
There are no other hands raised for our small group of dedicated attendees.
Okay. Commissioner Norton has his hand raised.
I do. I don't know if this is out of order, but I want to comment that I tell people that Mr. Garber comes to our meetings and makes incredible comments, and even on by right projects makes comments that I think the developers listen to and sometimes incorporate into their projects. So I certainly don't want to discourage that. And I'm not the city's counsel, I'm not the lawyer, but cities get themselves into trouble when they decide not to approve an administrative decision because people are complaining and they don't have credible reasons for it. So maybe Ms. DeLeo, this is getting in too much into the weeds in these signs, but some kind of message like the public is always welcome to make comments. They can make projects better, but this will be a by right project. If the developer meets all of the requirements, the city will have to approve it. Something along those lines so that we can kind of walk that middle ground to encourage folks to come in and be heard, but also make it clear that for this kind of project, the city's hands are tied and, somewhat tied in terms of making discretionary decisions. So maybe try it and see if it works. And that's something for us to chat through some more. But I know we're not supposed to engage in a dialogue with the folks coming, but just say I understand Mr. Garber's concerns, but I still think it's important for folks to understand the nature of the decision that the governing body is making and what's in the ambit of what they can do. So somehow to navigate that, I think would be really helpful. Thank you for letting me make that follow-up comment.
Of course. Okay. You can probably see my little visitor that keeps coming. So I'm going to move us. Number 5, communications. We received none, although some were alluded to. So I expect we'll see them at our packet for our next regular meeting. And item 6 is adjournment. 25 minutes early, guys. How'd I do, Alexis?
Love it.
Great. Love it. All right. Thanks, guys. See you later.